This is Cydni.
And I'm Sher. And each week we get together to share with you a message of hope.
It is through our own study and our personal experiences that we offer the reminder to not only seek the light,
but be the light. You can find peace, and there is hope.
And as long as one of us is slightly caffeinated, there will be laughter.
Today's topic is spiritual freedom.
And we're so glad you're here.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop.
All right, Cydni. So today we're going to talk about spiritual freedom. What does that mean?
When I think of freedom, I think about how I gave it up since 2010. That's when I had a child, not when I got married.
That good
matters.
For Ben.
It's good for him because Ben, that feels more free to be married to Ben. But then Rock came along and he took away a lot of my freedom, including spiritual freedom. I mean, have children, they're great. It's a trend right now to talk about not wanting kids. Do you know that on social media? It's a big trend to not have children. You'll have more freedom if you don't have children. And you know what I would just like to say to that? They're probably right. We didn't go out for a very long time. People with kids are like, you could still do all those things. And I'm just sitting here like, well, it was really hard to find a babysitter that I trusted. My mother-in-law, she babysat, and that was great, but you can't over-abuse good sitters. So you have to ease into it occasionally with one. You know you're going to have more kids, so you don't want to burn her out with one or two. So I had to wait till we have three to then burn her out. And she goes out of town a lot these days.
She's always out of town.
Yes.
Sorry, gone.
We're like, hey, we were thinking of going on a date night. She's like, oh, just booked a ticket right now as we were talking. I am out of town. But I love those little kiddos. Next time. You travel a lot these days, don't you?
She's a smart woman.
Anyway, I really love my children, and the freedom that they took from me also was great.
It's all gone.
I listened to Tony Evans give a speech about spiritual freedom. I liked his definition. Freedom is the unimpeded opportunity and responsibility to choose to righteously and justly and legally pursue one's divinely created reason for being.
Ooh, I like that a lot. That's good.
What I feel like he's saying is the goal of freedom is to maximize who you are meant to be.
I love that definition. I think that helps all of us. If we could all do that, that would be not only good for ourselves as individuals, but for society. That'd be awesome.
I think so. And I think it's the opposite of how we typically think when you think of spiritual freedom. You're like, oh, the 10 commandments, the rules, the guidelines that we can't kill or steal.
So lame.
Or commit adultery.
Lame, like, all lame.
That doesn't sound like freedom to me. That sounds like rules.
Right. And who wants to follow rules?
I want my kids to, but I don't want to.
I was just going to say, not an 8th grader. They don't want to follow rules.
I have an 8th grader. He is a better rule follower, though, than I am, I feel like.
I would agree with that.
I know. And when is that going to change? 14?
No, I think that he's going to stay like that and you're going to stay like that. I think that's solid, locked in.
I've been going through a midlife crisis since 20, okay? I'm going to break all the rules. Speed limit 30, watch me go 37. Oof. Whoa. Top speed for the minivan. There's a really good story, actually, though, talking about guidelines and potential, because David O. McKay had a horse named Dandy, and he was the finest horse that he had ever seen. He said under the saddle, anyway, when the horse was under a saddle, he was obedient and the most powerful, truly, that he had ever come across. And he knew that this horse would win competitions with his strength, and he had an incredibly impressive pedigree as well. But, he said, when the saddle was off, he was mischievous with his power. And he would break every fence. He would break all the rules. And not just that, but he would get the other horses to break rules too. He would untie the ropes around other horses and let them loose.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that wild?
Yes.
And he just said that he really resented restraint, and he didn't want rules, and he didn't want guidelines. And so when the saddle was off, he was up to something.
He was a demon horse.
He was. And he often had to be located somewhere else because he would break down the fences, other horses would get out, and he would try so many things to keep him in line. One day, he even got hit by a car.
Holy cow.
But he lived.
Holy horse, I mean.
Holy horse. Holy mischievous, unsaddled horse. But he got hit by a car and he thought, this is it. He's going to learn his lesson. But no, not that horse. He recovered and went back to breaking down fences and making his own way in the world one day he got out and the worst of the worst happened. He got into a shed with another top of the line horse, and they ate a bunch of grain that was in there. The problem was the grain had been poisoned to kill the rats and the mice that were in the area.
Oh, no.
And he said that he went to go find his horse, found him in the shed, and he watched two of his most beautiful and powerful horses suffer and die. And he said he held them and stayed with them to the end. And he just told them the fences were never there to restrain you. They were there to protect you. They were there to bring out your power and help you become your best. And I thought that goes quite well with that the goal of freedom is to maximize who you're meant to be, but there's guidelines.
Yeah, they're there to protect us.
It's a good illustration because sometimes it does feel like we have no fun.
It's true. If it's okay, I want to share one of my favorite definitions of spiritual freedom.
I will allow it.
Thank you. One of my favorite definitions is actually found in the Declaration of Independence. I haven't been throwing out a lot of history lately, so I need to bring it.
It's time to bring it back.
Yeah, I'm bringing it. Again, one of my favorite definitions is in the Declaration of Independence, and our founders were explaining to King George III that he was taking rights away that were not given to us by a king, but they were given to us by God or by our Creator. And because he didn't give us those rights, he didn't have the right to take them away. In the Declaration, it says, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. So what this is saying is that we are all created by God, all of his children, all of the creations that God has, we are all entitled to certain gifts. And that is the law of nature and of nature's God. So in school, what I would tell my students is that if you believe in God, then these are the rights that God has given you. And if you don't believe in God, this is natural law or Mother Earth, what Mother Earth has given you. For example, gravity. Gravity is a natural law. So we've all been given gravity for free. That is a gift from God or from our Creator or from nature. So everyone gets it. It doesn't matter if you are a plant or an animal, a fish or person, you all get it. That is a gift from the Creator. It would be really unfortunate if someone could take that away, but I would weigh less. So
I know I was thinking that the whole
would be
time.
positive.
But if there was heavier, like more forceful gravity, you would weigh more.
Yeah, I don't want that one.
So we have the perfect mix.
Yeah, I guess, well, maybe be a little lighter, a little less gravity. So that's an example of a natural law, things that are not man-made. It's a gift from the Creator or from God. King George didn't give us gravity, therefore he can't take it away. Only God can. That's good that only God can do that. Does that make sense, what natural laws are?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go back to this. We're all in our separate and equal stations. Every person, every creature, every plant, we're all in our separate and equal stations, but we've all been given the same gifts from God. And in the Declaration, it lists 3 of them. This is what it says. We hold these truths to be self-evident. So this is obvious that all men, meaning mankind, that all men are created equal. And what we're equal in is our gifts. They are endowed by their Creator. So we've been given a gift by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. These are rights that cannot be taken away by man because God gave them to us. These are the unalienable rights and gifts that God has given us. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So spiritual freedom is right here. This is an unalienable right that God has given us. We have the right to live. We have the right to have liberty, which means that we have the right to make our own choices and have the positive and negative consequences from that. And we also have the right to pursue our own happiness. That is the definition of spiritual freedom, and it's found in the Declaration of Independence. These are gifts that God has given everyone, and I love that definition of spiritual freedom. That's why I love reading the Declaration of Independence, because it explains exactly why we were leaving is because King George could not take away gifts that were granted to us by the Creator.
I love that. Or you could listen to Hamilton. That's another option.
That's a really great option.
But it's interesting because the worst things in history that have happened are men, women who take away those from people because they can be taken away. Your life can be taken away. Your pursuit of happiness can be taken away, and your freedom can be taken away. And the worst things in history that one human has done to another is there.
Absolutely. This makes me think of how do we keep our spirit free? Let me just read a couple of things for you. In Galatians 5:1, it says, "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." The definition that I love that goes with this is a quote by Dr. Barbara Gardner. I heard this on another podcast. She said, "When Satan wins, he has more power. When the Lord wins, we have more power, and God wants to share everything he has with us." So this goes to exactly what you were saying, is think of dictators in the world, Hitler, Stalin, Mao. They wanted more power. And so that's exactly what you're saying. They took people's lives. They took people's choices. They took people's freedom because they were being led by Satan. And evil men want to take that. Satan wants to take that freedom and those gifts that God has given us away from us. But the Lord is on the other side. He wants us to have that power and control over ourselves so that we can make our own decisions. He wants us to be born and live our life. He wants us to make our own choices, and he wants us to be happy. Satan doesn't want any of that. He wants the opposite.
That just made me think of one of the more famous quotes from Viktor Frankl's book, The Man's Search for Meaning. He says, "The one thing you can't take from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedom is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance." That makes me think of the "but if not" examples in the Bible. There's several stories where someone is trying to force their beliefs on someone else, but they refuse to bow. And there's an attitude of "but if not." The attitude is, I know that God is the most powerful and he can save me. But if not, I'm not bowing. I am not moving. I am staying planted in my beliefs. And I feel like that is the ultimate spiritual freedom, to have the understanding that God has all power and he can save us. But if he doesn't, we stay planted, grounded, rooted.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I love the way you put that. And I think that makes it really clear how God is the ultimate creator, which means that he has the ultimate power. Apparently, I only have an 8th grade brain, but I used to explain this a little differently to my class. I would always tell them that as a teacher, I loathe making seating charts because it's like a big, huge puzzle and you have to move this person. I mean, it's just constantly shifting. I hate making them. It takes way too long. I have other things I want to do. I hate making seating charts. So I don't ever want to give them, ever. I would just rather let everyone sit wherever they want and everyone be happy. I want them to pursue their own happiness, sit wherever, but sometimes I can't. And the reason I have to make a seating chart is because if I let my students sit wherever they want, if they can't control their attitude, their behavior, their work levels, all of those things, then I am being forced to move them. I don't want to, but in my classroom, I do have that power and I can move you wherever I want. I don't want to do it, but if you're making me do it, I will. And that's what I always told my class is I don't want to take away your freedom. I want you to sit wherever you want. But if you're forcing me to be your babysitter instead of your teacher, I will do it. I will be your babysitter. I will move you wherever, but I don't want to because it's a big fat waste of time, but I will if you force me to. God is the ultimate teacher. And he doesn't want to control us and he doesn't want to make us do yucky things. So he's just given us these guidelines, like we were talking about going back to the horse example. He's giving us these guidelines of how to control our life and how to continue to have liberty so that we can continue to make our own choices. He doesn't want us to get yoked, as it said in the scripture, with Satan and with bondage. He wants us to be yoked with him so that he can share his power and give us more freedom and give us more agency so that we continue to have that spiritual freedom. I just think it's amazing that the creator of the universe gave us or allows me to decide what makes me happy and to make my own choices. That is just absolutely incredible to me that I've been given that opportunity. And the more responsible you are in following the commandments and the guidelines and just being a good and decent person, the more choices we have. Going back to the Declaration of Independence, our founders wrote over and over again, if you want to continue to be free, then be a virtuous person. Be good and treat others well. Really, that's all it comes down to. That's what will keep us free as individuals, and that's what will keep this country free, is be virtuous.
I love the idea that you just shared about having all of this freedom given to us. And it makes me think of something that I'm going to go back to Viktor Frankl again, because he pushed so hard that if America was given a Statue of Liberty on the East Coast, that we need to have a statue of responsibility on the West Coast. It has to be balanced. If we are only given freedom, then there's going to be an attitude of entitlement, and there's going to be these expectations of me, my feelings, my wants, my desires. And that becomes very self-centered and selfish and, again, entitled. But if you have also with it the balance of responsibility, that helps us to look outside and see other people. And we just had parent-teacher conference last night. And Titus, he has some anxiety that he's been really working through. And the teacher, who she's remarkable and patient and loving to him. And we both had the same thought this week because we have new neighbors and Titus has had a bad week. And then he decided that their apple tree had dropped so many apples and they were going rotten and he was going to go help. So he offered to go help the new mom pick up the apples. And that kid was the happiest that day. He was glowing, joyful, his normal self. So I noticed when that kid is serving and he's thinking of others, he is who he is meant to be. He doesn't have time to think about just his own feelings. And then when he's at school, this is what she told us last night, that Titus is the most happy when he gets to tutor somebody else. He sits down and he's working with the kids who have some handicaps or learning disabilities. He's one of the kids that gets to help and serve them. And she said that she has found if she lets him have that role, he is pure bliss and joy. So I think we are given freedom, and we are given the freedom to pursue happiness and liberty, but we have a responsibility to help others also reach happiness and liberty as well.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great example, and good for Titus for just being a good kid, really.
He is.
That's awesome. This reminds me of, again, going back to my 8th grade teacherness. If you think about it, what's more difficult? To be free, because then you have so many choices you have to make and so many responsibilities. Even just what are you going to wear before you go to school or go to work or get up in the morning? What are you going to eat? What job are you going to have? What career? What school are you going to go to? I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. Having freedom is really difficult. Having those responsibilities is a lot harder than having zero freedom, because then you have somebody like Hitler, Stalin, or Mao that's telling you what to do all the time. All of those choices, all of those responsibilities, they're just taken away. It's like you do this or you're going to get thrown in jail or killed or whatever horrible thing they're going to do to you. So it is a lot more difficult to have that agency and have that spiritual freedom because it does require a lot more. But remember, everything has its opposites. When something is more difficult, that also means that on the flip side of it, there's so much more joy and happiness.
I like that. And I feel like sometimes we don't feel the happiness. Maybe we're following the commandments and we're doing our best to not kill anybody or to covet our neighbor's greener grass. And we still aren't feeling joy and happiness. I was thinking on that point that something that I learned when I was going through my therapy, I'd been going for about 18 months to 2 years. And I got to a point where I felt really stuck. I just felt it wasn't working anymore, or that maybe possibly it had made my life worse to go and try to get and seek help. I thought if I went and I faced the demons, I was going to feel empowered and amazing. And you could ask Ben for backing. I was a little bit worse to be around for a little while. I had a really cool experience though. I remember I had specifically prayed for help with this. I wasn't feeling like I was moving forward. I felt like I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. I was going to my therapy sessions. I was journaling and trying yoga and meditation, and I was miserable. And I was cleaning the house, just thinking about my situation. And I was listening to a song and a light bulb went off. I think sometimes God answers our prayers in lyric. And it's the Beatles song, The Blackbird. Do you know that song?
Uh-huh.
Do you want to sing it real quick?
Yeah, sure. Let me just...
You actually do sing, so you could.
Oh, please.
But I'm going to tell you. There was these lyrics. It says, blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Now, let me tell you what this means to me. I remember when I was a little girl that I said, as soon as I turn 18, I'm out of here, out of this town, out of this house, you know, like a normal 4-year-old. And it came to me through these lyrics that I had been waiting my whole life to be free, to move away. And I started therapy a few years ago. I had been out of that town, out of that house for well over 15 years at this point, and I still was feeling so trapped. And in my mind, I saw a cage with a bird in it with an open door. And I realized something. The reason I wasn't feeling free and the reason I wasn't moving on was because of my own perspective. It was my own thought. I was free. I was moved out. I was over 18 at this point. I realized that it was my own feelings, my own perspective, and my own lies I was telling to myself that was keeping me caged. I had everything before me that was an open door, blue skies, go, blackbird, fly. And I wasn't. This was one of the hardest lessons to learn in therapy for me because this happened to me. Someone did this to me when I was little. This happened, or this happened. It took that and it put a mirror in front of my face. And it was like, okay, you've been through a lot. There's a lot of ugly there, but the cage is open. And it's up to you now to change your perspective, to change your mind and accept the freedom that's before you. And it was hard because I felt like if I let go and actually healed, then there was going to be a responsibility I wasn't ready for. I felt having this history that defined who I was in my head, if I let go of that, then no longer could I use it as an excuse. Instead of saying, well, I haven't accomplished what I wanted to accomplish because this happened to me when I was a kid. That's the excuse I held on to for years. And all at once, the answer to a prayer was pretty hurtful. It was, you have the freedom and you have the responsibility to accept what happens next. And so at that point, it was the mirror in front of yourself of what is the next step, because you have the freedom to make that next step. You don't have to hold on to, as some say, the victim card. You can throw that away and move forward and fly and go and let go. And it's really hard to do because now in my life, it's me and my own responsibility. I don't have that excuse card anymore because I made the decision to let it go. That doesn't define who I am. It's happened to me. But like Viktor Frankl said, the ultimate freedom is choosing your attitude to your circumstance. My circumstance was not ideal. It wasn't pretty. But where I am now is not caged. And so I have to let that go.
That's beautiful. That is a great example. And I think that's good for all of us to remember because in all of our different ways, I think all of us put ourselves in a cage somehow, some way. But that's not what God wants. Like you said, the door is open. We need to have enough faith in ourselves and in God to step out and to fly. That's beautiful. And just as an example that I give my students, because it is scary to make those decisions and choices and to take it upon yourself. It's scary to do that. Years ago, when the Soviet Union fell apart, I was in college and there was a group of students that were from the Soviet Union that came over to this area and did a tour of the Western United States. And one of the places they stopped was at my little school, and they had been basically controlled by a tour group the whole time. And then they were just assigned different college students to go, and we were supposed to just take them around and show them the area and things like that. There were 2 people with me and our group, and it was just us. So they found out we're just normal college students. And we asked them, where do you want to go? What do you want to see? And they said to us, we want a pair of socks. And we're like, really? Okay. So we drove them to Kmart, and I just want you to imagine Kmart, right? And I want you to imagine all the socks choices, okay? Just think of the wall of socks. And we were in the men's sock department. So all of the socks, they're hanging up on the wall and they're on the racks. You know, do you want tall socks, short socks? Do you want dress socks, basketball? I mean, whatever kind of socks you want. And those 2 stood there and stared. They were not capable of choosing out socks because they had never seen so many socks in their life. So they had been to other places before they got to us, and they thought it was all a government setup. All the stores they'd been in, all of these things, they thought it was just a government setup to make us look better. But when we took them to the store, just get in our car, we all piled in, drove to the store, they couldn't pick out socks, Cydni. They were so overwhelmed because their choices were always one. Here you go. Here's your socks. Now that's easy. You don't ever have to worry about socks, right? You just take your socks. But when they had to pick them out, that kind of sets up how many choices that we have. Just sucks when you have such freedom like we do here in the United States. You have so many choices. And then to think about those eternal choices that we have too, where we lock ourselves in a cage and we don't want to get out because we're afraid of what will happen next. I mean, that is really scary and it is a lot of responsibility. But again, I'm going to go back to this. How beautiful is it that God, the creator of the universe, wants us to have that freedom, going back to what you said at the beginning, to unlock that potential that we really are his children and he wants us to learn and push us forward. That is so beautiful. Of course, he's a loving parent. That's what he wants for his children, is us to reach our fullest potential.
I love that so much. This is really putting it together for me that our spiritual freedom, as much as there's commandments and rules that we follow, just like the horse story, that those are meant to protect us and to keep us safe and help us reach our fullest potential. Like a diet, dang it, that we want to feel our best, so we say no to certain foods and yes to others. We have the freedom to eat whatever you want, but if you make...
You would bring up food right now.
I'm
Thanks
so hungry.
She's
Can we
hungry,
just wrap this
and
up
I've
right
just
now?
been sick to my stomach for the last
You're
few
nauseous.
weeks, but it's okay. Just keep talking about food.
I
I'm
like
kidding.
to say that I'm eating for two still. Not that I'm pregnant, just my personalities. I have more than two.
I don't feel sick today, so
You're improving well.
thank you.
You're doing amazing. You are reaching your fullest potential,
Yes.
Sher. But it's making me realize how we do, like you said, or my story of that we sit in an open cage so often out of fear or doubt or shame. So many different reasons that we choose to. But because of that, so many of us are living under our potential and under our privileges that we have been given. And it reminds me of a story that Dieter F. Uchtdorf shared. He talks about a man who had a lifelong dream to board a cruise ship. He wanted to sail the Mediterranean Sea, and he saved and he saved and he saved until he was able to afford to purchase the ticket. Since money was tight, he brought an extra suitcase full of cans of beans and boxes of crackers and powdered lemonade. And he would have loved to enjoy the shows and the extra activities and the fancy dinners, but he had to pinch his pennies. And so every night he would enjoy the view off the boat, and he would then return to his quarters and he would have a can of beans and some of his lemonade. He did this every single night for the entire trip until the last night, when one of the staff members asked him, "Which show and dinner did you choose for tonight?" And the man explained, "Oh, I am not paying for any of the extra activities. I can't afford them." And it was that I just felt emotional suddenly over this.
Over the can of beans.
Yes. And the powdered lemonade. All right. And so it was at this point he learned from the staff member that everything was included with his ticket that he had bought. That this whole entire time he could have gone to any of the shows. He could have gone to any of the extra activities, and he could have eaten any of the food.
Instead, he was just locked in his cabin, which I'm sure was stinky from all the beans he had been eating. That's
Terribly
horrifying.
stinky,
Yeah.
right? That's probably why nobody had told him before. They're like, "Don't tell the bean man."
Yeah, everywhere he
Oh,
went.
sad.
The bean man's coming.
We have a responsibility to help others, guys.
Yes. Don't eat that many beans in a week.
And the idea of the story is that we live beneath our potential in our day-to-day life, that there is so much available to us and there's so much for us to experience and explore. And we choose to go back to our room and eat beans and powdered lemonade when you could have it all. And that God has given us the power to have it all and has given us the freedom and has given us the responsibility to reach our potential.
I love that. Let's not lock ourselves in a cage, and don't lock yourself in a small little cruise ship room eating beans and powdered lemonade. That is not a good decision.
You are more than that.
Yeah, that's what Satan wants. Satan wants us to do that, but God does not. He wants us to fly and to eat all the food on the cruise ship.
I like that you bring up that is what Satan wants us to do, because I think Satan's quite happy to have me feel miserable and sit in my own cage with the open door to distract me from what is open and available and have me focus only on myself. So there's a few suggestions to help overcome what Satan desires for us, which is to have power over us and have us feel terribly sorry for us and sit in our doorless cages. And one of the suggestions we have here is an attitude of gratitude. And we have talked about this because over and over and over, we are finding this in every study, from family history to self-love to freedom. It's the same suggestion. They say, study after study, we find that if you have an attitude of gratitude, you will be happier. I liked the speech this guy gave because he says a few things. He said, get your joy back. Allow yourself, give yourself the freedom to feel joy. He also said that if you smile forcefully for 20 seconds, that will help you feel happier. So we are going to now count to 20 and smile while you're listening. Just kidding.
1, 2.
By tens. 10, 20.
And done.
Okay. So I liked the idea and the energy of get your joy back. Get it back. If you're not feeling happy right now and you really feel miserable because you're doing so many great things, but you're still miserable, give yourself the freedom and permission to get your joy back. And again, in the studies, they say to write down pen to paper or on your phone, if that is best, write down things that you're truly grateful for.
And I just want to say that every time I'm in a store and I see socks, I literally am grateful that I get to pick out my own socks, the color, the size, all of the things. I get to do that. And ever since that experience, I find joy in that. And I know that's dumb, but that's what I always think of. Little things. It doesn't have to be something big, but we can find joy and happiness and gratitude in small little things.
I think we are given those opportunities when we serve others. I feel like one of the greatest gifts that you can have in this life is the gift of perspective. And you had a gift to look at socks different than when I think of socks, I think of my kids leaving them on the couch and the front door on the counter lately. I'm like, whose socks are these on the counter? They're like, I didn't want to lose them. I'm like, well,
that's a really good spot
for them. And then I
for them.
quickly move mine off the counter so nobody knows that I also left them on the counter. It's a Crockett thing on my side of the family. We all do it.
That's unfortunate.
It's terrible. Not on the counter. That's a new development from a 13-year-old, but everywhere else. Another one he suggests is to use praise as a weapon. He said, praise your way through it, which I thought was a fun energy. So whatever's going on in your life, praise your way through it. And that goes along with gratitude, that you give thanks for whatever it is that you're going through, that you try to see the silver lining, or to, as we recently talked about, finding the tender mercies that are going on. And he said, as you do this, you will then be able to get in the way of someone else's storm, which I really loved that phrase.
Yeah,
is
that's
to
a good
get in the way
phrase.
of someone else's storm. If you take care of yourself and you get that joy back, then you are going to have the capacity to get in the way of someone else's storm, because everyone is facing a storm. So get in the way of it. Be a storm stopper. And then another one he suggested is redirect your worry to worship. And I thought that was also quite beautiful. When I thought of redirect your worry to worship, I thought of Psalms 91. I'm going to read some of it to you. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God. In Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowl and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor the arrow that flieth by day. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. I love Psalms 91 just for the confidence that it gives us that we are not alone. We're not fighting a battle alone. And that ultimately the quote that Sher shared, when Satan wins, he has more power. When the Lord wins, we have more power. And we have the power right here with us, that God is standing by us, helping us get through. And He's not going to let anything happen to us that's not going to be for our benefit in some way.
And life is really hard. And having all the spiritual freedom that God has granted to us, it's difficult. So don't give up on yourself. We all have the ability to reach that potential that God wants us to. We just need to open that door, open the cage.
And we understand that the guidelines and commandments are there not to make us feel trapped or restrained, but to protect us. And we just want to summarize and say that the ultimate goal of commandments and guidelines is not meant to hurt us or make us feel restrained, but to keep us safe and to help us reach our fullest potential. And so this week we challenge you to do the list, to have an
To
attitude.
read the Declaration of Independence
Or
in
listen to
triplicate,
Hamilton.
read it, and then write it down in calligraphy
Yes, do that.
3 times. Or maybe not.
You have the freedom to say no to that one.
Okay, go ahead. What is our real challenge?
We want you to take away some of the energy from this man's list, the attitude of gratitude, to give yourself permission to get your joy back, live your days with joy, to forcefully smile for 20 seconds. You can do it. And to use praise as a weapon and redirect your worry to worship. It has been said recently when they're studying brains that the same place that anxiety exists in our brains is the same place where gratitude exists. And one can be there at a time. So if you're feeling anxious, you can replace those anxieties by an attitude of gratitude. So we challenge you to do that. Replace your anxieties and replace your worry with worship and with praise and with gratitude.
And use a feather when you write. And on that note,
Have a great week, you son of a gun. Don't have that. I don't know where it came from.
I'm adding.
I'm forging my